the GCCM. This particular event, Localizing Climate Financing for Positive Adaptation Journeys, is actually a very important moment in the life of the GCCM, but particularly of the communities that we're working for. Because here we're showing the advancements on actually localizing the finance to the communities and giving adaptation money to the communities so they can be empowered and do the work that is required for their adaptive journeys. And this is what this session is going to be about and what we're going to be listening from our distinguished guests. This has been a long journey, driven a lot from the knowledge from the Pacific Islands, but also, as we've seen, with friends from the Caribbean. I'm honored to introduce our speakers for today, His Excellency Mosese Bulitavu, Minister of Environment and Climate Change of Fiji, His Excellency Maina Talia, Minister of Home Affairs, Climate Change and Environment from Tuvalu, Her Excellency Jolene Clark, Minister of Sustainable Development, Environment, Climate Action, and Constituency and Power of St. Kitts and Nevis. Man, you have lots of responsibilities, Minister. It's a long title. Mr. Xavier Matsutaru of the Office of the President Whips in Palau and Head of Climate Change in Palau. Mr. David Gibson, Director General of National Adaptation Board of Vanuatu, and Mr. Michaele Finau, Climate Mobility Fellow from the GCCM, from whom we'll be talking about the process, and we'll get there in a bit. So, to proceed, we'll first see a short video of each of the experiences of each country, and before that video, the speaker of that nation will take the podium to address the audience. So I'll request the people from the technical team if they can first play the video of Fiji and then give the floor to Minister Bulitavu.
Tamani vese ulevu. Yanandende levu kima misatawai. Namani ni ndaki vese wango iliu. Kwa mandangango, erone ya tu wale ngwa satu iwai. Kwa ngwa sagai sasanga chiku irungwa mersatu, okay? Kwa sananggo endua ngangwa sanga iwai. Wakando mambula na ndaki vese wango wana nindaw tau na uza walu mai. Sasarabi tu ni tako si kena wena wakando mambula. Kito wato ya bumirani to wali mirango kusatu ki. Tok nga bagalili sa kango ana muna ya Hambaw bakare bagisarangan ni taong ginawuda wulu sa ilamba. Kimam sa tako si kena wai kimam gesa sanga may natisarang wami kimam ito sa tindalan. Namin dondo tiga na wulu. Manong ka saan namin dondo tiga na wulu. Iniwirangan na tarawali tindalan kim dondo kin. Sa takos to na wai gay kuy bakan do mambula. O yung mandang tukuna o maraw paliv. Bibukin live sa lakawang na yuan sa kim sa talita ka sa ngayon sa katima tutulungan mo sa ato at satos ko may nasisi. Nagpundra sa raw ng manunggo na langay sarod kim man mandangan ng gas. Meron gay to kiro mo meron gay really na tiko mo maraw tak.
Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Nisambula Benaka, and a warm greetings from Fiji. This important session highlights the Communities Climate Adaptation Facility, C-CAF, an initiative that is closing one of the most persistent gaps in global climate action, the gap between climate finance and the communities particularly vulnerable to climate crisis. For small island developing states like Fiji, the impacts of climate change are immediately and deeply personal. Yet too little climate finance reaches local actors, leaving vulnerable communities without the tools to act when disaster strikes. The C-CAF model changes this reality by providing rapid flexibility adaptation grants that empower communities to respond quickly, build resilience, and protect livelihoods. Fiji's own climate relocation of communities, CROC Trust Fund, shares this spirit, ensuring that relocation and adaptation are community-led, dignified, and rooted in local knowledge. Together, these mechanisms shows that localized finance is not small finance. It is the foundation that makes large-scale investment effective and sustainable. Short-term, community-driven funding must therefore be seen as catalyst for transformation. The first mile of resilience that builds confidence, restores livelihoods, and prepares community for longer-term investment from public and private partnership. As you've seen in the video that was just played, how happy the community was and how the lady or the women testified that in her generation, that they should be the only one that should have experienced it. And they hope after this, when they relocate to the new site, their future generation or their children should not face what they had went through or they'd gone through, given the effects of climate change through flooding in those prone areas in near Nosori at Wunyunrobo village. Excellencies, Fiji strongly supports the expansion of C-CAF and similar climate finance modalities as a model of inclusive, scalable, and community-driven adaptation. By putting resources directly into the hands of those most affected, we ensure that the adaptation is not delayed by bureaucracy, but driven by people's urgency, innovation, and hope. Pinakabalevu, and I thank you all.
Thank you, Minister. And I'll just make a small note. Sometimes we wonder, what is it that we're doing here, right? Traveling so far, seeing so much things, and sometimes we lose the sense of purpose. But when I get to see your fellow citizen from Fiji, 68-year-old, that's going to be benefit because of C-CAF and this whole effort with the adaptations funds, it all makes sense of what is it we're doing here, why we need to keep working. So I thank you really for that. In the same note, we'll see now the video from Tuvalu and then the words of Minister Mai Natalia. Please, the video.
The most important challenge relating to climate change impact with our community in Lopia is the water supply. And given that we have these buildings, huge buildings that can supply water, so we have the opportunity to receive water supply from there. However, these water supply, as you know, we depend a lot on the rainwater. So once there's droughts, then there will be a lot of impacts imposing on the community. The good thing about this project is that we are not only benefiting from it, the community itself, but the whole community on the island, even the governments, because we are all sharing the same water supply. If we can do this as a small community, that means other communities can do as well, the same thing. My hope with this financial support is that it will make big changes for the future of my community with regards to climate change impacts. We are confident that also the governments will still support us with regards to this. Also under these global facilities that we may receive from time to time. And it is our hope as well that this should be continued. Once we complete these projects, we still look forward for new projects to come up. Because given the smallness of the country and the impact of climate change that we are receiving at the moment, this is really a big risk to community livelihoods daily. With these supports, I guess it is important that we offer our great appreciation, not only to the governments of Tuvalu, but also these facilities from overseas. We have to thank the Global Center for Climate Mobility for considering this important proposal in order to overcome the situations that we are facing at the moment. Thanks also for governments for supporting us from that small area, Localized, with these coming up projects. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity for me to say some few remarks after watching the short video. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Talofa, I extend my great appreciation to the organizers of this high-level session on localizing climate finance for positive adaptation journeys. Just the word climate finance, it sends different signal to different people, whether you are from the provider side of the equation, or from the receiver. While the UNFCCC lack of an agreed definition on climate finance, the business transactions of climate finance continue to flood agendas of multilateral climate funds. For providers, it often means pledges, portfolios, and accounting lines, a question of commitments and delivery schedule. But for small island developing states like Tuvalu, climate finance means lifelines, the ability to protect our people, the ability to build after disaster, the ability to plan for future that still exists, to retain our right to remain on our God-given land. As a result of this gap, the conversation around or about climate finance has become more about how the money moves than what it achieves. We must change that to make climate finance about tangible outcomes, real justice, and survival. This is why localizing climate finance through innovative mechanisms like the Communities Climate Adaptation Fund, C-CAF, and the Pacific Resilience Facility, PRF, must be advanced to provide rapid response adaptation grants. Already, projects under the C-CAF are underway across Tuvalu, restoring assistance and water tanks in the outer islands, rehabilitating community centers with climate resilience materials, providing equipment for waste treatment, coastal protection, and access to schools, building a multi-purpose resilience and empowerment hub for the women and persons with disability in New Tao. These grants cut across vital sectors: water, sanitation, health, housing, livelihoods, and reach even the most isolated communities, including those forced to move by climate change. To build on and further support these mechanisms, the international community should call for 1% levy from voluntary contribution to international climate financing institution to earmark for community-led adaptation projects. I urge our partners and donors to expand C-CAF beyond its current success in working with 5 countries, so all vulnerable communities may benefit and more resources are made available to our communities to design their positive adaptation journeys. We have shown that it works. The ambition is within reach. Now is the time to seize the momentum and scale C-CAF to meet the front lines of the climate crisis. Faraf. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. You said something very relevant. It's not only about the money, but what we achieve with it. Sometimes we lose sight of that. So we have seen projects of relocation in Fiji, projects about sanitation and water, in this case, in Tuvalu. And it's very important because it's the community that decides on the project. It's not a bureaucracy. It's not even a government. It's the community that says, this is what is meaningful for our own positive adaptative journey. That's the model we are following. But from the Pacific, we go now to the Caribbean, to a similar setting, and in this case, in St. Kitts and Nevis, which we'll see first the project video and then the words of its minister.
The Communities Climate Adaptation Facility, or C-CAF, led by the Global Center for Climate Mobility, empowers frontline communities facing rising seas and climate shocks. Through quick impact grants, C-CAF bridges gaps in climate finance, enabling local people to build resilience, restore ecosystems, and lead their own adaptation journeys.
I'm Kevin Bennett, the Vice Chair of the Capacity Project Development Committee. Our project addresses some critical issues. One is the extension of the jetty, 2, the creation of artificial reef, and 3, the deployment of monitor-based buoys, which collect critical information. Our community faces quite a number of challenges. 1 is declining fish stocks. 2, we also had issues with the lack of navigational aids. Previously we'd have an incident where a vessel ran aground on the reef, and it is something which has been happening continuously over the years. And the vessels not only cause damage to the reefs, but the vessels themselves become damaged.
My name is Lionel Stevens, President of the Sandy Point Agricultural Cooperative Society Limited. And our project is geared towards addressing water shortages for farmers. Here in St. Kitts in general, water for farming is not a priority, is not necessarily part of the policy. So we as farmers have to find alternative means of accessing water for continuous production. This support that we would be receiving from C-CAF would help the community to be more sustainable in terms of food production, because the farming entity of the community getting such a support as it relates to water harvesting and being able to store water for dry periods, it kind of ensures that we are in a position to continuously produce food and make it available for the community.
My name is Delanda Levine, and my initiative here is quail husbandry and hydroponics. The quail husbandry and hydroponics is going to be used to not only combat climate crisis, but also to demonstrate to persons in the community at our demonstration center that is going to be on the farm, how we go about dealing with quails and also hydroponics.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy that these 3 videos, apart from making me want to just go back home, have said enough to demonstrate to all of us the importance of this partnership with GCCM and the importance of really unlocking climate finance for community interventions. Our community partners, as you see here, fisher folk, and of course farmers, they have the solutions. They don't need much from us. They certainly don't need a lot of words. They need the resources. And that's why the government of St. Kitts and Nevis and the ministry that I have the pleasure of leading, we're so grateful to the ongoing partnership with the Global Center for Climate Mobility. The truth is, every time we leave as a delegation to come to COP or any events of this nature, we have to justify to the farmers who we're here to represent and the fisher folk that all of this, as you mentioned, why are we traveling so far? It's necessary to do this, as warm as it is today, to ensure that their livelihoods can continue. They have the indigenous knowledge, the local knowledge, they have the solutions, and our priority really is to advocate for more finance to get directly to them. What's critical about these three projects is that as a government and as a ministry, we had no say in what the projects would be. We didn't design the projects for them, and we don't control the projects. We support, because it's the in-kind partnership and the collaboration with government and civil society and community organizations like these that's going to change and make any real impact in our communities. The last thing I'll say is, whenever we advocate for climate finance and adaptation finance, we also need to advocate for specific funding. Now it seems like everything is thrown into one pot. We're not clear what the monies are for, but we have a responsibility to advocate for funding that's not only grant-based and concessional, but funding that's flexible, funding that doesn't come with a lot of strings attached, funding like the resources that have been mobilized by GCCM. So thank you so much for making their lives meaningful and their work a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. No, and it's us that thank you for working with us and trusting the model, which is an innovative model. Now that you mentioned, sometimes it's more costly for financial institutions to fly officials than the projects themselves. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense when it's about the communities. So I really thank that and thank the collaboration. And it's also demonstrated that it is possible. And that's what we also want to demonstrate, so we can reach more communities. In that same regard, we'll see the video from Vanuatu and then listen from the remarks of Mr. Gibson.
Suppose houses está by or convenience of life of people by bringing safety or community.
Mana dah gitu, kalau begitu mas, houses suppose stop ya. Sampai ia terjalan pikuan. Boleh kata apa mereka mencapai. Bikin saya ikut cuma, boleh kata cuma. Misal pikuan nak kata house saya yang saya terima. Pero ya house ya pasal apa kami ya, boleh kata cuma. Mau misal mereka boleh kata apa mereka mau something. Yang boleh start save side.
How long we my community is safe. For community is safe, for community is better. Place is a whole meeting, for him is a whole plan is something change. For especially time of cyclone, community is safe. Lo house project by staff, the local community learns from by establishing one share house, establish one house as a community, only meeting some activity, making inside one salary. So, long also one disability without them tiny law project by staff. And the important community was practically from the organization house which membuat populer modifikasi time, which is possible to look up following the any private member have taken them so the community by particularly area from we got established in time cycle and some or Europe by MPs by next year we still by particularly community
Thank you from Portuguese and Liga Pere from time where los hay y no colocamos los digamos make them share me Liga Pere from unique experience in Seika so go title way go go landslide by safety house law community or importance law life law community from some Lomicola disability staff the house by seven good Nicola law area law life law Micola.
Distinguished delegates, excellencies, thank you again for the invitation to come and present Vanuatu's intervention. Before we make our trip to Brazil, my superiors summoned us and asked this question: why do you have to go around the world with over 15 staff to attend COP30? And I think this is a classic example of why we wanted to be part of the discussions here. This is a classic example of why we want to be part of the discussions here. Vanuatu has a local setup where we approve projects quite quickly. We have the National Advisory Board of Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction. We also have a steering committee on displacement, which I am the chairman on both. And we do approve interventions like this very quickly. And I must say this, that sometimes communities, they look at climate change and the finances that we talked about, but they've never seen the impact on the ground. They've never seen it. But I'm glad that this initiative happened at the local level. I'm glad that the local communities have the ability to make that decision to improve their livelihood. And before I finish, I do hope that this initiative will not be a fly-in, fly-out initiative. It has to be there for the long haul. And with that, I would hope that we will solicit support and make this happen and scale up the activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. And I take your word on that. This has to be for the long. And for that to happen, we need to keep working together, the governments, and raising the voices. So we're here to do that. And this has happened because of the support of the countries too, raising the voices and the donors to come and to facilitate and to cut the bureaucracy too, to make it happen. Now it's the turn of Palau. We'll see the video from Palau and the remarks from its representative. Because we found the video. Sorry for the...
Pulavinaka, everybody. Can you hear me? Test, test, test. Test. Okay. Pulavinaka, everybody. Ali from Palau. First, to acknowledge the presence of the honorable ministers and excellencies and distinguished colleagues. For my take, for Palau's take, I want to be a little bit more specific because my job is sort of that interface between the international community and then getting the coordination and support on the ground. So we do a lot of observation on the ground, and we are very familiar. My other job is the NDA for the Green Climate Fund, for example, on our experience on the process of accessing the finance that's needed. And then by the time he actually reaches on the ground, if he actually gets on the ground, that's one part. The other part is sort of like what I've seen becoming sort of the role of different funding entities. If you are applying to a multilateral grant, you're looking at a minimum of 2 years, if you're lucky, to get that support. Then you get into the process. The process, and nowadays when we're talking about climate finance, that fit for purpose process that we're advocating for, because of the layers of processes that are required, that does not match your current capacity to do the administrative work while trying to implement the grant. Okay, so that aside on the timing of it, and while we're doing that, time is not of essence. For example, in Palau, we used to have once every decade higher than normal sea level. Nowadays, since September of last year, every month we're getting 2 of this what's called nuisance flooding. It's just enough to flood people's lawns, their driveways, road systems into their villages. So they actually have to wait to return back to their homes during those tide events. And so, but the way that these grants are designed is not exactly at that local level scale. They're usually at, it's almost trying to get the biggest bang for your buck. So it goes to maybe a restoration of a particular area where an entire community might benefit, but it doesn't address the day-to-day experience of individual homes and community members. And that's what I see as the niche for the GCCM C-CAF program, is that you go straight to the source, you ask what they need, they identify, hey, my lawn and my driveway is getting impacted. How can we apply to get that direct support? And one of the support that we're now applying for is to do a little bit of land filling, because we know that relocation is inevitable, but you, at least at this point, at this moment, immediate relief is needed to buy us time while we develop the policies, plans, land use strategies so that you can do the relocation. Not to say that there is no place for multilateral grants. I think there is a home for that. But then there also is a home for the rapid, immediate, high impact relief that we can direct them to the areas that are most vulnerable, and also at the position where it's really difficult to have higher difficulty in accessing those grants. I've seen the actual template. It's real simple. And you fill it out, went through an approval process. By the end of December, it is scheduled to be released. And within less than a year, we're going to start doing these projects. So to me, that's a game changer, because you're actually seeing something of difference, of improvement that you can see at the community level, while at the same time, we work on the architecture, the modalities of the multilateral grants so that they can become fit for purpose. But to me, I think that's a long game. In the immediate term, at least we can get the immediate support that we need. So with that, thank you very much for your time.
When communities see different organizations and agencies working in Palau, working together to help them have direct access to funding, I think it builds their trust. helping them to understand that they have the capacity and the knowledge to do the work.
My name is Tony Solablay. I serve as treasurer for the Koro State Youth Council. Our program aims to rehabilitate the Nason watershed, and that is a critical water source that's been affected by flooding, soil erosion, and poor drainage, really. Our community struggled to manage heavy rainfall and flooding issues within the area. And we had limited equipment and funding, which made it difficult for us to carry out the needed work. And so even though we have people on hand to do the work, there wasn't so much the ability for us to carry it out. And this really calls out to the effects of climate change, the impacts of climate change in Palau. Receiving funding directly as a community gives us ownership and accountability. And I think when you're looking at smaller communities, we know our environment best. And so with this immediate kind of funnel to us, it gives us that sense of trust, but also knowing that if this project is successful, hopefully it creates a domino effect of even more help to our communities, even more support to our communities, because we are capable of doing the work. We would just need more funding sources like this that are immediately helpful. This partnership through C-CAF, GCCM, and the government of Palau, especially coming from a youth member and a youth representative from Koro State, we can really see that collective action, especially when it's fast acting, is beneficial to everybody involved. And it really shows that community-led adaptation action is really where it's at. And so we've looked at these much needed improvements. We've looked at issues within the community that are related to climate change and with the environment. But knowing that we have that kind of support boosts morale, but it's also really great for future projects, hopefully, that can kind of help us continue the great work.
Direct-to-community funding allows us to streamline the decision-making and procurement. We have immediate control, or particularly the community has immediate control over the schedule, enabling them to hire and make purchases when prices are favorable and adapt swiftly to on-the-ground challenges.
Through this C-CAF model, we are empowering local voices, respecting traditional knowledge, and investing a place-based solution that can be adapted to other vulnerable island communities.
Thank you very much also to Mr. Matsutaro for his remarks. And what we see here, it's not only the projects, it's a philosophy behind it. It's a different way of doing things. And that's what matters. In this kind of project, it's fit for purpose, but for the purpose of whom? Of the community, not of the bureaucracy. It's fit for the purpose of the people that need it, not of the donor who puts the money. Sometimes now that we have these discussions about aid nowadays, many people say, no, it has to follow, it has to be accountable to the taxpayer. Oh, but many of these communities are not responsible for the climate crisis. And who's accountable for that? So this philosophy is putting in the center of the climate action the community. It's all about respecting the community in its own journey. So what we have seen across the different examples is that philosophy, but also in how it's implemented through the community, the government, and GCCM. And that's what we'll hear now in that concrete example. We'll hear now from Mr. Micaele Finao, who is a Climate Mobility Fellow at GCCM. But it's through him, and like him, many other fellows in the ground, in the communities, that the projects are implemented. It's not a big bureaucracy serving itself. No, it's the community itself operating in its knowledge, in its youth. When we talk about empowering the youth, it's not just jargon, it's not just language, it's action. And that's why the community fellows are the link to the community, to what they need, to the knowledge, to the culture, to the heritage, to the people directly. So, in that sense, we'll hear from Mikael's experience, and from his experience, project to the other fellows that have done the same or similar work in the ground, in the communities. Okay.
Esteemed guests, honorable ministers, distinguished delegates, Bulaminaka to everyone. I will be speaking on behalf of the other Climate Mobility Fellows that have been supporting the work of C-CAF on the ground, on the respective countries that have spoken before me. As part of the GCCM support team in the region, we help to support the establishment of the National Selection Committee, which reviews and endorses the applications. So at the preliminary selection process, the National Selection Committee actually gets to review and prioritize which applicants are to be selected for the C-CAF. Now, a little bit on the National Selection Committee. The National Selection Committee has a diverse multi-stakeholder structure which consists of governments, NGOs, UN agencies on the ground, and other partners in the country that have deep local understanding. They also support implementation where possible and scale up and accelerate. Now, the reason why it is very important to engage NGOs and other partners on the ground is because they possess that trust and existing connections with our communities, and they are the ones who can actually help in the implementation of these C-CAF projects. It's not just government stakeholders that are in the National Selection Committee. After the selection process, the Climate Mobility Fellows will be supporting the communities on the ground once they receive the grants. We will ensure that the C-CAF grants is utilized well in the implementation of the C-CAF projects, keeping close track of it, as well as reporting back to the GCCM team, the C-CAF team. For Fiji, we have successfully identified and prioritized 3 communities, Buninunrobu, Narata, and Maduatiwai. From the 3 communities, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you one of these communities whose story is very unique to me, Maduatiwai. It has a very unique story because displacement has already happened due to saltwater intrusion. Now, saltwater intrusion has gone to affect agricultural yield as well as their water sources. As we know, for us in the Pacific, we depend mostly on wells, rivers as sources of water. So saltwater intrusion has gone on to affect their sources of water, which has caused them to move. Now, in the year 2000, there were 200 people that lived in this community. In 2011, only 9 people remained. As of today, there are only 2 people remaining in the island, the village headman and the wife. So through this help from GCCM, the C-CAF program, we are going to restore water supply, retrofitting homes, rainwater harvesting, and reconnecting families with fiberglass boat and training. Despite these hardships, traditional landowners and displaced families have expressed a strong desire to return to their islands. For myself, as well as the other fellows, it is indeed an honor to support our government, as well as the Global Center for Climate Mobility with the C-CAF work on the ground. And most importantly, to witness this life-changing journey for our communities and translating ideas into tangible actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michaele. So we have heard about the C-CAF, we've seen the projects, and now I'll like to invite our authorities, minister representatives, and Michaele to come forward here to have a family photo to remember this special moment, and also to have the audience to give us a hand for this advancement in our projects of C-CAF. And thank you all for being here. Please, the authorities.